Hi, and welcome to the Kite Channel Lounge, the cybersecurity podcast, dodging the vendor sales pitches and delivering genuine insights, news, and predictions. Hopefully, we're going to have a lot of fun on the way as well. I'm your host, Stuart Nairne-Clarke. Today, I'm joined by Hexnode and Blake Neate, UK Sales Director, and Dan Pratt, UK Channel Manager. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Hello, sir. Nice to be here. Nice to be here.
How are you both?
Good, thanks. Good. Other than praying in the back in the gym, the drive was good, and it's looking forward to doing it.
Yeah, all good, all good. Enjoying all the fun new things. Podcasting, a bit of a first for me, so it's good.
I was going to ask actually. So, do you guys listen to them?
I go through waves, so I'll be on them big time. Go through a lot, starting 10 years back with the Ricky Gervais show, and then doing sports ones, all sorts, but not as consistently as I'd like. I want to keep baking it in a bit more regularly for me.
Yeah, I tend to listen because I obviously spend a lot of time on the road. So there's whether it's the good, the bad, the rugby, whether it's some of the guests that go on, the Stephen Bartlett one, the Diary of a CEO, or I've actually recently found my little guilty pleasure, which is takeaway trivia. So basically just quiz against myself, which is always fun.
Sounds like you.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic! And is this the first time you've actually been in one?
First time, definitely recording. Never mind any sort of cameras, trying to dodge spotlights from a shine perspective. But yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I've done some fireside chats and stuff like that before, but in terms of actually being in a studio and things being relatively professional, this is at first. Hopefully, it's not ruined.
Nah, look, it'd be good. We'll have some fun as well. I guess before we start going into anything else, it'd be really good to get an introduction to both of you guys. I've introduced you by name and title, but a little bit of background and maybe the route into cybersecurity as well for yourselves. How'd you find yourself here today?
I mean, it's a long old route. We've all been doing this too long now. But for me, I was a computer science degree. The only module I could get on with was security. The rest I found I was inept at or bored in. So going into a sales route where you're not sat there coding all day on your own, getting frustrated, was the route I had to take. So straight into a IT security reseller, and ended up doing 19 years at what eventually became Bytes over the years. So yeah, worked my way up through more security focus to start with. By the end, obviously Bytes did everything. And then for me, wanted to get back to having a bit more autonomy, starting something myself, being part of a scale up, and joined Hexnode almost a year and a half ago now to try and build up what we're doing in the UK here.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear actually that I think you're the first person from a vendor perspective that we've had in that have come from that channel, that partner background. So I think hopefully we'll touch on that and pull into that as we go through.
Sounds good.
And Dan, how about yourself?
I think as per probably most of your guests, I've heard and listened back through some of the other episodes completely by accident. So I was working in a completely, I guess, irrelevant to what we do sector in compliance and environmental testing, and it was hugely based on nepotism. So my dad got me a job. I was rubbish at it, and when I wanted a bit of a change, I stuck the CV out there, and a recruiter got in contact and said there's a company called Arrow based in Newmarket, which wasn't too far from me, and they're looking for an internal account manager. Do you fancy it? And I was like, I don't really know much about computers. I can turn it on. I can use Paint and Excel and Word. I thought I'd give it a go. And during the interview, the hiring agent or hiring manager basically said, I don't think this is going to be for you. You're going to be bored. And I went to stand up and walk out, and he said, I'm actually going to have an external role coming up, which I think you might be better for. So in lieu of any knowledge or experience, they kind of just took the fact I'm quite noisy and can talk to people, and the rest of it you can kind of teach and pick up. So yeah, that was the best part of a decade ago, and obviously where I met Blake, he was one of my partners. I managed Bytes on the F5 piece over at Arrow. Made the jump through a couple of other disties, and then when it was time for a change, this man reached out, and here we are.
Fantastic. No, it's really good. I think what we're learning is our listeners, and being at trade shows as well and seeing some of the students that come to the stands, etc., all looking for a routine, whether or not they're doing a degree, whether or not they're doing something completely random and are going to fall into it by accident. So I think it's really good to kind of give that background and perspective from our sides who have been around a little while. So today, look, we're gonna talk about Hexnode and around UEM. We're going to touch on MDM, and even in just there, right? One of the things that we need to be really clear on, I think, as a channel is just sifting through the noise, making it really simple, removing all the acronyms. So let's introduce that first, right? Let's touch on what is an endpoint? What can an endpoint be? UEM, MDM. Do you just want to take those bits?
Yeah, well, I guess, an endpoint is there's various different ways. It's a device, really, or typically. So it's going to be something that you interact with in order to use an application or a service or access to a network. It's that end touch point and connection between user and system. That's really what it is. I think when we talk around the acronyms, and again, I remember my first 5 years really in the industry, it was, if there was a acronyms for dummies, for IT, it would be volumes of encyclopedias level big, because there's more every day. I think where we are now with UEM, it's an evolution. So people were probably more synonymous with MDM, so mobile device management. You then started to look at things like EMM, which is enterprise mobility management, RMM, remote monitoring and management, and a load of others in between. And eventually you arrive at UEM, which is, and the key letter of that is the U. So it's unifying all of the endpoint types. So no longer worried about just a phone. No longer worried about, can we also bring laptops into that? This is everything. So it's phones, laptops, tablets. You can be looking at rugged devices within, certain industries like retail, very, high volume of those types of devices. And I guess, whilst there's always going to be a gotcha somewhere, we can say with a level of confidence now, with the way UEM is, there really isn't a device type that we have to be worried about. Oh, how have we got to play there? Is it an endpoint? Let's have a conversation. So that's quite a nice,
Yeah,
I guess, destination from where we were back when MDM was new and people started worrying of giving out these phones. How do we actually control them? All of a sudden now we're in a place where let's just have a conversation about your entire estate and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's a really good place to start. I mean, you just touched on it there, right? The whole endpoint piece has exploded.
Yeah.
And that has brought a huge amount of complexity as well. Yeah, to those organizations, to those enterprises, right? So I guess, what is the reality now in terms of the market and the challenge that those enterprises have?
I think, coming from a security background, there's a lot of similes to the challenges people purely in a security role have with endpoint management. There's just volumes of logs coming through. There's all different consoles looking after different endpoint types predominantly. Then there's all the subsidiary, I guess, tooling or functions that you associate with that now, the remote management, patch, and all these different functions that you have to juggle. So for me, the problem, you used the word exploded, it's like anything, just data everywhere, same amount of people trying to do a much bigger job than they ever had to do in the past. And the biggest challenge is trying to simplify that, trying to bring the noise, get the noise out of the way, bring them what they need, and give them one place to manage that, or to even be trained on, really. So very similar to the way the security market's gone, in my opinion. I'd say managing endpoints, that similar problem has exploded.
And I think you've highlighted a challenge there, right? And I think for me, how is that responsibility in the enterprises that you're talking to? How's that being managed now across the management of that challenge, from IT to the cybersecurity teams as well? Because ordinarily they've been two different silos, right?
Very much so. And, they're all encroaching. You get, different management teams come in and smash departments together now, and those responsibilities can cross between. In reality, you've got the challenge, or as a seller, from a reseller perspective or a vendor perspective, you're trying to talk to a particular persona about their problems, understand what's driving them, but you kind of want to also steal some budget from their colleagues' problems and their colleagues' projects they've got on, to help them achieve what they want, whilst ticking off other boxes from the rest of the business too. So the bigger the impact you can have on the wider business, the more incumbent it is on us to have multiple conversations with different people in the same business.
Yeah.
And hopefully you're making everyone feel like they're going for the ride their colleagues going on, and everyone's getting a benefit out of it.
I think that in itself is, it depends what your perception, half full, half empty. It's a challenge in terms of, it's not like when you've got network security manager, that manager is in charge of network security.
Yeah.
There's very rarely you're going to find someone who is endpoint device security lead. That role is unlikely to exist, and certainly in smaller organizations. I think the beauty of, I guess, capturing a persona with what we do and the industry in which we play, it's kind of everyone's problem. Now, as I said, whilst that is at times frustrating, because trying to find that real one individual with a pain point, isn't always going to be ultra evident. But it's a security concern. It's modern workplace. It's networking to a point. It's overall security. It's compliance, and even as far, and I'm sure we can touch on it, as we go through. But even marketing.
Yeah.
It becomes a problem for marketing to manage, and also a marketing budget pot for people to actually tap into as well. So the problem of not having that one direct persona, in reality, actually opens up more opportunity than it closes down.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I guess one area as well that we didn't touch on there, that we've looked at it from the internally within the organisation, but then the user as well. The user in control of that the endpoint, the whole user experience of those is really important as well, right?
Big time. Yeah, big time. And a lot of our conversations are around how we can improve that experience. When they initially get a device, what does that feel like? Or you put all this work into these native toolings like autopilots and ABMs and what have you. Let's not rip that apart. Let's keep the paramount. The end user gets the best experience. Let's leverage all those different things that are already in place, and let's look at how do we improve that experience? How do we make you look good in the business? Because everyone around you is happy with the IT department right now. So yeah, it's a big thing.
And Dan, so let's maybe take a different perspective of it. You're living and breathing the channel every day, right? So we've talked about the kind of the enterprise and the customer challenges, but what are you hearing from the partners in this space as well? And do you think they're doing anything differently given the explosion and the challenges and everything that we talked about?
Yeah, so I think firstly, each partner is at a different point in that journey. Is a bit of a podcast buzzword, isn't it? But it's every partner is at a different stage of maturity around it. Some of them are fully on board with pushing UEM, almost UEM as a service, and they understand the intricacies of what we do. Some of them are still very much kind of point solution based, and I understand the logic behind that. It's the customers ask me for X, I'm going to make sure I provide X and do it well. But I think in general, partners are starting to really mature into, I guess, more of a solution based sale. I think one of the challenges partners arise, or bring up with us is exactly what we just covered. They're struggling to identify, okay, but I've always spoken to the security lead within my customer. How do I kind of further this conversation? And it's quite a nice, I guess, lesson for us to teach as kind of channel people. It's, well, you can still talk to that same person, but it means you can also use that person as a champion or an advocate into other parts of your business. So
yeah,
I think that the challenges that the end users see are obviously going to be raised in exactly the same way by partners. I think partners are probably just a bit more, I guess, familiar with how to piece different solutions together. That yes, they're going to have their favourites, of course they are, but end user has typically always had their eggs in a particular basket, or they've always been, a Microsoft house, or they've always been a house of X or Y, whatever. Being able to actually go in and be slightly disruptive, but without any drop in control and functionality and features and outcome, that's a message that partners actually really like taking into these customers. So it's been, with some partners, it's been a challenge, obviously, just trying to be disruptive. The nature of it, you're gonna annoy some people, you're gonna disrupt some things. But the partners that have been receptive, which is the most, it's been a really positive kind of message to bring.
Yeah, look, I've got to be honest from my side of things. And when we started to speak as Kite and the Hexnode, my perception, wrongly, was that MDM market had kind of been and gone. You know, we all hear spikes and there's the buzzwords around as we walk around InfoSec, etc. But just taking a little bit of a look, it's anything but done. Absolutely anything but done, right? And you know, that's from my own perspective. Well, look, let's take a little look inside at Hexnode, really. And where I'd like to start, Blake, you and I attended HexCon, your annual end user and partner conference over in Atlanta last month. And there were lots and lots of takeaways. But one of the key things that really stuck out for me was around consolidation, both of tools and operating systems, etc. What was the key takeaways from the event from your perspective?
For me, it's an opportunity not just to see some, quite a few of the guys from the UK went out, and I get time with you and customers and partners as well that way, which is great. Similarly, getting exposure to what the American counterparts are going through, and a lot of it for me actually was exposure to the partners and MSPs, the challenges they're seeing in their customers. They're bringing them back into us. We're still in a nice place as a business where it's there's a duality to it. We want that understanding from them, the features they need. How can we improve? For us, the consolidation piece is massive. What's the word? It's giving that partner the platform to get good at delivering something, delivering an outcome, and then having hopefully a less dependent need for the next customer to only have one device type as well. Yeah. So they can apply it there. It's actually being able to say we can play that out across multiples, which means you're competing with different competitors in each individual space, and you've got a lot of people to fight with in different areas. But those partners that want to be able to deliver a service across multiple avenues, we make so much sense to them. Mm-hmm. So everything we're trying to do around keeping the portal clean and easy to navigate, kind of 3 clicks to anywhere sort of mentality and all this sort of stuff, it really resounds for those people who are trying to really apply the tool on as big a scale as they can, really. So that was the insight into that, the sort of challenges they have and how they've been able to apply it has probably been the biggest benefit for me.
Yeah, one of the things that really struck me was the collaboration with that community, the customer community as well. Taking feedback, listening to feedback, but actually acting on it. And it was my first time there, but it was very clear that some of the topics that were discussed and presented, it was leaning on the feedback that they'd had from previous years as well, which I thought was excellent to see as well.
Yeah, big time. There's really regular catch-ups I have into head of technical, but also Apu, the CEO, of Blake, we've smashed through our list. We need more features from you. Like, you're not challenging customers enough for what next. Like, go get it, go find it. So it's nice when you're seeing things and we're pushing features out at an incredible rate. It's nice to see that, oh, my customer asked for that one. And so there's a nice correlation back into that and a bit of a direct connection to it. So that is a really good forum to kind of see it in action. And a lot of those guys that attended had played a big part in why we're doing what we're doing, really. So it's nice to see that feedback.
And I've spent a fair bit of time with you guys over the last few months, and especially since our launch, and it's clear that you guys are really excited both by the market, the opportunity, but Hexnode and the company themselves. So interested to hear from you both, really, in terms of what really makes Hexnode stand out for you guys, and maybe different pieces based on the roles. But yeah.
I think for me, again, referring back to one of your previous episodes, I think it might be the chaps from Talis were talking about there's no point in having agility without direction and output. We're very, very good at not saying no as a business. So the answer, particularly within that technical side of the business, when you're on POCs and demos, whatever, it's, can you do this? The answer is either yes, and we can demonstrate it, or not yet. And that for me, that actually took some getting used to. I felt really uncomfortable not saying no. I'd kind of trained myself to be confident, just saying that's not us. You want to go to vendor X or Y, but for us to actually, obviously providing it's a tangible link to what we already do. But we've got 500 odd people within the business. 65% of those sit in kind of product development and in technical roles. I'm sure we obviously, what we may do, discuss it later around kind of customer success. But one of the things that really sticks out there was one of our prospects who, Merlin, one of our colleagues in the account exec team, he'd done a load of work with this customer and they threw up a bit of a curveball last minute and said it'd be really, really good for us to have this. And it turned out probably wasn't quite a deal breaker or deal maker, but it was pretty important to what they wanted. From the time the POC started to it end, we'd actually built an entirely new feature for them to use that they then went live with. So our ability to be able to do that, and we had a company town hall, company all hands a couple of weeks ago, and Blake mentioned Apu, our CEO. He said that as a business, we need to be able to think like a startup and deliver like an enterprise.
Yeah.
And that for us is kind of central to the mentality of what we're trying to do. It's, you need to be able to deliver as if you've been doing everything forever, but have that willingness and openness and agreeability just to make changes as the customer requests. And again, being, I guess, customer centric for me helps it, but helps my job because partners see that value. I know for Blake and his direct sales team, for those guys, actually being able to deliver on promises and not just say, we'll be able to do that, sure, and then trying to muddle through and make it up, knowing that there's a very, very strong chance we're actually going to be able to deliver on what we say we can and beyond. That's a really, really nice sentiment to be able to take into partners for me.
Yeah. I guess obviously mirror everything Dan said there. If I was to try and add something different in addition, it's probably the user experience centricity, I would say. So, our founders came out of another very big business that already had a product in this space, and they built Hexnode with in mind that don't just want to be powerful, I want to be usable. So the interface, even with pretty much the last out there in our space that allow people to make sure they can phone somebody straight away from a support perspective. It's all about making sure people get tangible value out of the platform. Maybe a benefit of being able to manage so many different devices is that you're always thinking, if I do well here, they'll onboard some more devices with us. Mm-hmm. There's always that cross-sell, upsell opportunity that you got to keep impressing them. You got to keep, doing the right things with the customer to keep growing that opportunity. So they all work nicely together to kind of push in the same direction, really.
And I guess looking at the platform as well and taking a look at the platform and solution, I guess the benefit of having that all-in-one solution, all-in-one platform as well, that's really strong, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is one of the differentiators for us. That there are some really big names in our market. One of them that comes to mind immediately are the known quantity within Apple management. And for us, of course, we see them as a competitor for obvious reasons. We want to manage Apple devices as well, right? But I think being able to say with confidence that you can then scale whichever other devices you want, and you haven't got to worry about bringing in supplementary or secondary, tertiary tools. For us, that's a really nice value add into that initial conversation. And then, for those of our competitors that have, something nearer to parity in terms of coverage, Blake mentioned the UI and that real simplicity, 3 clicks to get to any action within the portal. That is the differentiator. We're a new vendor in terms of UK market and brand. We're not as big as the competition that everyone's going to be probably more familiar with. So our ask of partners typically is get us a seat at the table. Once we get a seat at the table, we win the deal. Mm-hmm. Because when particularly someone in a technical role, they've probably signed in and have 50 different tabs open every single day just to do their job, and knowing how to use each of those in isolation is one thing.
Yeah.
Knowing how they all fit together is another, and then actually enjoying that process and experience of using it is an entirely separate thing. So the fact that we can actually satisfy all of those different challenges at the same time, for us is massive.
Yeah. And then the dread of Chrome telling you got to relaunch because you've had it open on standby for too long. So yeah, very much so. He's trying to get away. I think the language I liked on a previous podcast was the swivel chair effect of running between tools and what have you. So like anything in sales, my responsibility and my sales team's responsibility is not to sell every time to whoever you speak to. It's to, as quickly as possible, understand is the person on the other side of the phone experiencing the challenges that we address. And you spend the time on the ones that do, and it's incumbent on Dan to help make sure the partners understand what challenges do we address, where are we relevant. Let's all put our time into the things they're gonna go off and find those mutual benefits, customers and partners alike. So for us, it's nice that we've got so many avenues available to us for there. We can be relevant for different types of partners with that in mind, and it's incumbent on us to be nice and clear about what we do and don't do in that arena as well.
Totally. We've touched on consolidation a lot, but one of the things that struck me when we were just having a conversation over a cup of tea before we came in as well is that a more considered approach from the customers as well, of maybe bringing the inclusion of previously unmanaged devices into that unmanaged groups of unmanaged endpoints, into the environment as well. Is that something that you see as well?
Yeah, we do. I mean, normally your first conversation is about that burning problem, that burning need they already know, and there's that cheesy land and expand sort of thing that happens very regularly. But yeah, the concept that that was a problem I didn't have before, maybe a bit scary to even start taking on ownership of those, to be able to try and demonstrate that, look, if you can understand it for this device type, you can apply it also for that device type, single place to build policy, etc., etc., or even to build policies that say, I can allow you to move away from what might be an expensive device type now and allow the business to incorporate something that is a bit cheaper that you were a bit more nervous to manage in future. I won't name phone brands, but with that in mind, single uniform policies, or just allow it to naturally, dynamically fall from you were on that device, now you're on this device. Here's the policy pre-built, ready. So a lot of what we're doing is trying to enable people to bring those in without feeling like they've introduced more problems, more time drain, more risks. Feel like a net benefit rather than the opposite is the idea.
Okay, so maybe we can take it into the real world, and we've talked about it kind of from a higher holistic level, the opportunity for partners, etc. But is there any real life stories, I guess, that we can touch on from the field?
Yeah. I think for us, and trying to, I guess, give a nice idea of what we do. They don't mind us saying their name. So the company thinking of at the moment is Current Health. So up until recently, they were part of the Best Buy group, really famous in America, but they're a UK-based business. They were using a competitor of ours. Initially, they moved over to us because they had 10,000 devices, and their business model is they manage these Android-based tablets that their partners and medical businesses would use those tablets to send out to a patient when they come back from hospital. They might be using that to do hearing tests. They might be doing heart monitoring. They might be doing all sorts of different kind of, I guess, aftercare and doing it from home. And Current Health enable those businesses to kind of deliver that service. So what that weirdly means is that these people these customers are having a device potentially for a week or 3 weeks, and then they're sending it back. So not only have they got 10,000 devices, they're reprovisioning those once a month, realistically. So in terms of actual sheer need for a tool like ourselves, they're probably one of the most extreme cases in terms of constantly playing with it. So they bought into us to try and streamline that process, cut down the amount of time that their engineering team were kind of wiping, reprovisioning, getting staged, getting ready. And that was the reason that they kind of moved to us initially. But what I liked is it's a nice clean example that the typical end user for them is somebody that's at home trying to use a device they're not used to, maybe even having visual or hearing impairments as well. So actually the use case and the challenge for them, if they have a support issue on one of these devices, their average support call is taking 43 minutes. Because they're trying to speak to somebody over the phone that isn't as familiar. The fact that we did the remote management for them on those Android devices as well, and you can initiate that yourselves, meant that they cut that support time down to 7 minutes average. So obviously the end user's getting a better experience, but their IT team drastically reduced in terms of the day-to-day requirements. So they're really, really good use case for us. They're using us at such a large scale, but it's nice. It's such a big impact to their business model as well.
That's a fantastic case, isn't it? And one a little bit out of the ordinary, I guess, as well, but so simple when you really take a look at it and unpick it.
Yeah.
I think that's it's something I've mentioned on when I've done webinars alongside you guys, and obviously when I'm speaking to partners as well. In the most, IT teams don't care about how much things cost. That's a problem for the bean counters. That's procurement. That's that's an operational thing. The currency of IT teams is time. It's resource that they don't have. It's time they don't have. They're being stretched and pulled, and as we kind of touched on earlier, asked to log into 50 different portals to manage everything in their infrastructure. If we're able to cut down, from 43 to 7 minutes, again, we appreciate it's an extreme example, but that's a very real example where we're actually able to give them back something intangible, tangible in that time that you didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to obviously keep them relevant as well, that they're still integral to that solution process. Using our tool makes it easier for them, but still keeps them involved. So we're not promoting something that's just going to oust an IT team and replace them with a bunch of droids. It's very much, we want to help you stay relevant, stay important, and stay efficient in what you do.
And improve the experience of the IT team. So retain the good staff you've got as well, because people get bored in these roles. It's the same with SEAM and SAW and all that sort of stuff, right? It's trying to keep the good people, allow them to elevate what they're doing on a day-to-day basis to something a bit more interesting, a bit more impactful.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
So let's maybe take a look at this from the partner perspective now, Dan. And again, your area of remit. How does the channel model really help the partners to identify and progress these opportunities? Essentially, then to realise revenue at the end of it. But how are you guys helping it? And what's the model?
I think there's a few kind of key pillars that you have to have in place before you start talking around specifics with interaction. Firstly, it's profitable. So we're very good at maintaining that profitability for partners. We've got an existing channel model as a kind of group, as a business. The business have been very kind to allow Blake and I to ultimately run things how we need to get that brand off the starting blocks in the UK. So solid double-digit retention for all partners. That's always going to be what excites a coin-operated salesperson. Can I make money on it? I think our availability and willingness to work with people. So again, we've got in-country technical resource. We've got resource out of country as well if it needs to expand. From a sales side, we've got that account exec team. We've got an engine that works kind of in the background to generate new leads. That again, we're 100% channel, so everything has to flow back through partners who, we either see the need to invest in or the need to reward investment back into us. But I guess from from an engagement perspective, one of the things we've been very mindful of is whilst we've got a really nice consolidation story, and it's something, of course, we want to push because we want as much of that wallet share and that proverbial pie as we can. The reality is that particularly Microsoft tends to be the elephant in the room just because it's Microsoft, right? They're not going anywhere. They are a behemoth.
Mm-hmm.
The perception of Intune, which is the product within Microsoft Suite that we ultimately compete with, the perception of that is it's part of my existing licensing agreement, so I kind of have to use it. Now, we've got a couple of ways around that. Either we can educate them to say, you actually don't, and here's a solution instead, or it's, Blake mentioned augmenting earlier. We can actually say, why don't we just take that and make it better? And that's where it's a really nice conversation to start having with multiple different personas, because you can talk about device management, and that's probably going to be someone in a modern workplace type role, maybe networking, maybe kind of general IT. Then patch management, that's one of the areas that Intune isn't as proficient in as it is other. So we could bolster that. It could be that you need remote monitoring, which again, one of the many acronyms we mentioned at the start, RMM is something that typically is that additional tool required in most deployments. So for us to actually be able to go in and empower a partner that may have sold to Microsoft, not have them seem like cowboys just saying, I know I only sold you this last year, but you should probably rip it out now because I've got something even better and I'm actually making more money on it. For us, it gives them that empowerment to say, we already got this whole licensing agreement from Microsoft, for example, but here's something that's actually going to bolster the performance, the efficacy, the security of it. And in most, partners have been pretty receptive, even those partners that are quite heavily Microsoft centric. I think they're mature enough to acknowledge, the silver bullet doesn't exist. We can get pretty close to it, and that's something that we're just trying to push. So, partners, I'd say in the most, partners are open, receptive, quite willing to have a conversation at least. And as I mentioned a couple of cards ago, when we eventually do get a seat at the table, we're in a really, really strong position to start progressing things through and win that business. So, just more of that, please, channel, if anyone's hearing that.
I think one of the things that struck me as well is the diversity of that channel. So we've talked about those Microsoft partners, and we've talked about your traditional cybersecurity partners, but partners, frankly, that maybe hadn't come across from my radar before. Those partners may be selling devices, the Honeywell devices, the Zebra devices, etc. So the opportunity is huge as well, right?
It is, and I guess this is where there was a risk of slight blinkering from Blake and I, and Merlin, who is our senior sales guy. All three of us has come from security channel backgrounds. Blake and Merle's from the reseller side, me from distribution. I've always been aligned to kind of big tech and to security tech, and been quite, I guess, almost a bit spoiled. I've never had to go in and introduce myself. It's always been, I work for X and I represent Y. Now it's obviously using a slightly different set of tools. So, we're having to educate partners on the arena in which we play. One thing we learned very quickly, and one of the partners that we're having really good conversations with, actually come through a relationship of yours. But partners that, to say that they're not bothered by it wouldn't be fair, but just haven't really ever explored that corporate device world.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not managing laptops. They're not worried about iPads and Macs and that kind of more traditionally office-based equipment. They're selling the phones and phone contracts with it. They're selling the scanners into retailers. They're selling PDAs into logistics and shipping companies. That for us was, greenfield firstly and most importantly, but secondly, a completely blind industry, for us. So it's been really, really interesting. Firstly, learning about that world. We've made no attempts to hide the fact that for Blake and I it was new ground. But at the same time, being able to help those partners mature into a corporate device. Like we're having conversations at the minute with a partner who looks after some of the biggest retailers in the UK that manage all of their scanners for the scanners you shop or for warehousing or for delivery drivers. Have never once had a conversation about their laptops in head office. And for us, it's mutually beneficial that we obviously learn more about that kind of adjacent world, and we can help mature them into what is probably a more familiar for most of the listeners of this session, that kind of corporate device type. So it's really interesting.
And Blake, we said we were going to touch back on your experience around Bytes and leading teams there. So I think while we are talking about the channel, what can partners expect from you and your team? And I guess rolling back the clock to being inside that partner and having expectations on vendors. I just thought your insight in terms of the channel strategy in Hexo is so important.
Hey, and thank you. It's interesting. You mentioned Merlin a few times here. Came from a similar tenure in the space as well. So it's been good. It's been easy. It's been nice to have a bit of carte blanche to think what should a channel program look like, and managed to get Dan through the door. And Dan's obviously been in that middle distribution tier, which gets to see everything, gets to see the good, the bad, the ugly, gets to hopefully pick the best bits from everywhere. So between the lot of us, and it's a collaborative thing, we're trying to make sure that experience is everything we wanted when we were the other side of the fence. I remember being at a reseller, and the vendor would potentially spend far too long talking about what they wanted to talk, and there's half of my team I know are just waiting to say, how much margin am I going to make? Where's the deal protection? How do I stop so-and-so coming in and stealing my deal? And almost like that's the barrier to them learning about the actual product itself. So how important some of these elements can be. And for us, it's been nice that I haven't had to kind of drill home or challenge anyone in the team when we get a really small opportunity from a reseller. And there's a no-brainer there that, that's not the profile of business that we were desperate to go after, but that's an opportunity to show that reseller, go on a demo with them, to show them the sort of use cases, the sort of pain points we hit, for that individual to start for it to click and to apply that to the other customers they do have. So it's been good to attack it knowing intrinsically the value that you can get if it works well. If you get people on board, if people actually see it's in their interest to talk about you to their customers, that's huge. And they're just the biggest extended version of your department that you can ask for if you do it well. So everyone's trying to do that and what have you. And, bringing in Dan was purposely to make sure that we weren't completely two reseller guys trying to say, hey, I've known how to fix this for years. But yeah, very much so. That's been the idea, is that there's been no question mark whatsoever that channel is the route, and that's what we want to do. And it's helped to not have to battle anyone.
It's so refreshing to hear, and I'm really passionate about it as well. And you mentioned in terms of that ICP piece, of course we've got an ideal customer profile, but we can't be arrogant at the same time, right? We need to go and build that trust, build that confidence, build that business, right? And I really like hearing that piece of, if there's an opportunity there, let's go and help the partner in collaboration with the support, and let's go and get our first win, right?
Well, I think, that, going back to what Blake mentioned earlier around land and expand, because of the nature of what we do, that's always going to be a reality. And I think, most businesses have devices that they don't even realise need management. That is, if that could be a takeaway for anyone, that's a great sentiment to have from a partner's perspective going into customers. I even sold you those HP laptops, so I know you've got them. I sold you the iPhones. What about the tablet that's sitting on your reception desk? What about that screen that you use for marketing? What about the scanners for your warehouse team? Things that, because you've never sold them, you probably don't realise that they need that aftercare, that management, that control. So for us, taking on these less than utopian customers in terms of size and deployment, for us, really, again, it's kind of a no-brainer to do that, and then just see, how we can expand and grow.
In summary, it's a perfect opportunity, isn't it, for our partners right now?
Yes,
it really is.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. I remember looking at huge lists of renewals that I would class as weirdware because I'd not heard of the vendor before, didn't know what it was. So in my mind, it wasn't a big glowing opportunity to make loads of money, but you still wanted the market, the wallet share. You wanted to be their customers' go-to person, so you do what you could. But actually knowing that some of those, yes, if you win them, that's great. But actually a management tool overlaying that and a value add being presented to it could really get you back into the sort of the value adding echelons that you want to be in, what you'd seen previously as your core. That's something that's kind of awakened me, like you say, the Zebras, the Honeywells, all those areas that I was so security centric. I wasn't focused on previously. So yeah.
So the market's evolved a lot, and as I touched on, even from the first time I ever touched MDM. So where do you think the evolution of this endpoint market goes moving forward? Let's take a look to the future. How does it continue to change, evolve?
I'm not sure if we're in enough to say AI by now on one of these, but yeah, in reality, obviously everyone's got a piece, and there's elements and chunks of what we're doing now where we're leveraging that to, I guess, improve the technician's experience typically, and really make sure those people managing these tools and our tool are getting the best value as quickly as possible and looking good to their peers. For us, the next iteration is using that, empowering the end user to better improve their experience quickly, and digital experience management is probably, for me, the next iteration of where we're going next with all of this. For me, at the moment, the most relevant sounds bad, but the most consistently brought up topic for us is improving patch and patch management. That's one that it's been a problem for a long time, and you'll try and explain. I'll try and, if anyone in my family asks, why do people need you, and try and explain in simple language. Patching has been a problem for a long time, but say you just spent a load of money on a Land Rover that you put on your driveway, and you found out that every week or every other week Land Rover put a story on their website to say, Dave in South Wales found if you bang the back door 3 times and kick the tyre, the door pops open. just telling you about this vulnerability, guys. By the way, plug this in and you can fix it. Just come back to our website every day just to make sure there's not a new story for you to go and fix. You'd be fuming. You'd be thinking that's not how the life should work. But weirdly, that's how IT has kind of evolved. So for us, the bigger the customer, the more endpoints, the more challenges, the more third-party solutions they've got to juggle. They're manually asked to go to Chrome and Adobe and, hey, is there a new update for me? Do I need to wrap it up and package it out and send it out in MSI? And they don't always realize there's a way to automate that. So that to me is the more short-term thing that's happening right now, that the conversation we're having a lot.
Yeah, it's a lovely way to wrap that up, I think. So, AI, really forward thinking, right relevant now. And again, like you said, that patch management just hasn't gone away. I think it's fantastic to wrap up that way. And I think, Dan, from your perspective, what most excites you, I guess, the next 12 to 18 months too?
I think it's partners realising the potential of services within this space. It's traditionally been a more resale heavy mode of procurement, I guess, where it's right, you've asked for 1,000 devices worth of MDM, here you go, I'll check in every 3 months as almost a CSM type role, but I'll see you for the renewal. I think businesses have got to a point now where they're so ruthless with that traditional kind of box shifting reseller, where there's very little loyalty beyond pound notes. So I think customers that are able to actually add value through service, and it's a horrible term, but to make people a bit stickier in terms of the relationship and to almost lock them in, providing they're adding value and doing it for the right reasons. That's something that I've noticed in the last couple of years across the kind of tech stack, but noticed really probably the last 3 or 4 months, the conversations we're having aren't just how can we make money from this, it's what can we do in terms of getting our support desk involved, how can we add services, MDM as a service, UEM as a service. These are all relatively new things in terms of the scale at which they seem to be growing and people having conversations around it. So that for me is a really great conversation because it shows intent, it shows a level of commitment from a partner. So for us as a vendor team, it's great. For you as our sole distributor, again, that's great news because it means that we're going to be able to lock in these conversations, for a much longer time.
Perfect. And I guess as we start to wrap up, if there was let's say one takeaway from each of you that we've talked about a lot here, it's clear that the opportunity is huge. What are the key takeaways? Just one from each of you.
Going to play the card, there's too many to think of, but in reality, for me, because we're a UEM, because we're an MDM, it's easy for us to be almost pigeonholed into quite a big space, but still pigeonholed into a space. So for me, it's actually what feels like the most impactful conversations into the partner ecosystem, the problem they didn't know how to fix, a few of our competitors have pulled out of the market, is actually that automated patch management. So, for me, actually, if anyone took something from this, gained some value from this, and realized something we did that they didn't know we did, that's probably the most impactful thing I'd want people to kind of glean from it.
Dan?
For me, it's probably that consolidation shouldn't mean dropping functionality or dropping service. I'll throw a kind of bonus one in there just to reiterate, our CEO's sentiment I mentioned earlier. It's being able to work with someone that thinks like a startup, is agile like a startup, but delivers like an enterprise. That is pretty unique. You're usually either one or the other. We're mature enough in global terms. We're new to the UK market. We want people to challenge us, give us some tough conversations, tough challenges, and we'll be as accommodating as we can be.
I echo that again. Going back to my experience at HexCon and listening to and witnessing the feedback from that floor by your exec team to really, really take on board and execute. It was clear to see. Usually at some of the conferences, it's one way. You kind of preach to the audience. Yeah. I think there's a huge amount of listening and learning from your team, the exec team there, and I saw it firsthand.
Yeah, it's a forum, right?
There's an element of risk for Si, our head of engineering, to stand on stage and say, what do you want next, guys?
Yeah.
I'm here. And you worry they're going to ask a lot of things that you might not be able to do and you might look bad, but there's that openness to just bring it. Let's see what we can do.
I think that comes from confidence as well, knowing that what we do works and what we do
Yeah,
works
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
You wouldn't put yourself in that kind of exposed position without, a level of cocksureness to say, we can do it.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Makes sense.
Well, guys, I've really enjoyed this. Hope you guys have too. I'm sure the audience will. I guess to close off, we always ask our guests this, but if you could recommend a guest to sit in your seat, who would it be?
For me, I've always kind of lived by, or certainly worked by the mantra: if you can't explain your job to a child, you don't understand your job. Potentially not a child, I think, obviously in professional terms, but maybe a grad or someone who's looking to come into this industry, just understanding what their preconceived idea of the channel is. That would be really interesting, and
Yeah, I like that.
maybe being able to educate them as you go, but just that innocence and naivety and kind of rawness that we all had as young people.
Really ground us, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
That's much cooler than where my head went. For me, I'm so used to seeing on LinkedIn and all this sort of stuff, people stand up from other major vendors that I respect and you do look to for guidance about where the market's going, what's happening next. But I'd like to see someone from a somewhat senior technical role, probably at the implementation or reseller land, people who are that bridge, and try and get as many perspectives in that arena really about what's the next challenge you're seeing, what's the biggest gap you've got, what would you want from vendors like ourselves to try and kind of breach into. That would be the most impactful for me.
I like that too, and I'm sure we can make that work. Well, guys, thank you very much. It's been great to have you.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
So to our audience, I've been Stuart Nairne-Clarke, your host. Please follow our channels on YouTube and Spotify for the next episode. Speak to you again soon.